In the 1990s, I had avoided becoming involved in Lewis and Clark's off-campus study programs. I was teaching regularly for Stanford University, and I did a dozen seminars for Stanford on horseback in Montana, on Trans-Canada by rail, and on small cruise ships with 65 passengers in Southeast Alaska. But my former students at Lewis and Clark kept persuading me that I needed to go to Africa. Stefan Amack, who'd been my research assistant in the early 1990s, was among those. And after his return from the Peace Corps in Ghana, he said, "Come on, Professor Beckham, let's go to Africa." So in 1997, we flew to Kenya and lined up outfitters and instructors. And then in January 1998, we departed from Portland, Oregon with 25 students for a long sojourn from January to May in East Africa. I refer to this as a long-deferred midlife crisis. I didn't have time for it, but in 1998, daughter Anne-Marie was in her senior year, final semester at Lewis and Clark College. My wife was busy as assistant principal at the high school, so off I went. And it was a high adventure trip. It was very much like what I did in Boy Scouts. No suitcases, backpacks only. And we moved every couple weeks in East Africa. We started out in the Malepo Hills with the Swahili instructors. We broke the class into 5 cook groups of 5 students each, and each had a Swahili instructor. And then we flew to Lamu on the coast. I chartered a couple dhows or wooden sailing ships, and we headed north to coastal Somalia. The Indian Ocean coastline was absolutely breathtakingly beautiful, with mangrove swamps, islands, and mostly deserted villages because of the troubles in Somalia. We spent a sojourn at Malindi and Mombasa, studying Swahili language and culture and archaeology. A trip to the island of Zanzibar for the spice trade and the colonization by the Omanis and then the Portuguese in East Africa. We were in Nairobi for lectures at the National Museum with Dr. Meave Leakey on paleontology, and the students then launched their independent research projects. We took a week off. The students did independent travel, and I flew down to Amboseli National Park at the base of Mount Kilimanjaro. We then made an expedition on camelback through Laikipia in the highlands of central Kenya, and then north to the Laroki Forest for encounters with elephants and giraffes and other big critters. And then the high point, I think, of the whole trip was going to Ngorongoro on the slopes of Mount Kenya and climbing the mountain. We made a trek of 10 days, 104 linear miles. We crossed the equator on foot twice.
We climbed to Lanana Summit at 15,555 feet elevation. That was an arduous experience for an old professor, all of whose students were half his age. We split into 2 groups, and we went from opposite directions and met at around 14,000 feet, camped together, and then did the summit climb as one group. We set out at 4 a.m. with headlamps in the ice and the snow, high on that mountain peak. And at dawn, we watched the sun come up over the Indian Ocean, ripple across the land, and illuminate Mount Kilimanjaro far to the south on that distant horizon in Tanzania. A really, truly remarkable experience. So when I got home, I was able to tell my son and daughter, Dad has just climbed a really remarkable mountain 1 mile higher than Mount Hood in Oregon.
It was a strenuous, interesting expedition, and I think all 25 students and outfitter Stefan and his brother Ethan and myself benefited greatly from that challenge.